Hey, welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Channel. I am Darren, and today, I've probably done this one before, but I just can't remember. But I'm going to do it a little different. I'm going to do a prime rib roast. We're going to use the Joetisserie. We're not going to sous vide this today. We're just going to cook it on the Joetisserie, and we're going to use the MeatStick. I got a new MeatStick probe here, and they said this one is a little bit newer and better on the ambient temperature reading. I think it's supposed to be able to use it in hotter ambient temperatures. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a try, and we're going to monitor this prime rib roast on the Joetisserie. That's one of the things that these meat sticks and these wireless thermometers are great for, is being able to monitor cooks when you're using a rotisserie, because there's no wires. It just, you can spin it as much as you want, and this is going to read the temperature. So I'm going to go ahead and use this today, and we're going to follow it up and see how it turns out. Just cooking it in a regular Joetisserie. I'll be right back.
Smoking, grilling, getting hot and hotter, sous vide and chilling from fire and water.
All right, guys, so first thing is first, I took this out of the freezer a couple days ago, let it thaw out. It was already pre-seasoned with a little bit of salt, pepper, and garlic. And I'm just going to put just a little bit more on here before we cook it, just to make sure we got enough on here. It's this is one of those prime rib roasts I bought when they were on sale. It's got the bones attached, so we're going to cook it just like that, and let it spin on the rotisserie and get evenly cooked. First thing I got to do is wake up the meat stick, and I'm going to show you how I'm doing that. I still got it in the charger, and I'll show you how it works here with the Wi-Fi bridge. So this is the Wi-Fi bridge, and right now it's not reading the meat stick. So we're going to go ahead and click that, and it's going to go ahead and read this meat stick and tell us that it's reading it. Let's see. Takes a minute for it to read it, and then it's going to pop on. There you go. So now it's reading the meat stick. And usually what you want to do is just put it in your hand so that actually the temperature changes, so that it knows it's active. So here it is right now. It's reading the temperature of 89 degrees on the internal and 80 degrees on the ambient. So I know it's working. I got the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth showing up, so I know it's reading both of those. So I'm going to go ahead and put this inside my meat, and then we're going to go ahead and get the fire going. All right, guys, like I said, this is actually going to run on the Wi-Fi too. So I'm going to be able to monitor this with my phone, and I'll show you the phone app in a minute once I get this thing going and cooking. But I'm going to put it right here in the middle, as thick as I can, because I want it to monitor that internal temperature, because I don't want this to overcook. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this off when it hits like 132 degrees, because by the time I pull it off and have some carryover cooking, it should be at right 134, 135 to finish. But you got to make sure you put these in most of the way in, at least this far in. The ambient temperature is going to be right out here, but you want that in the internal temperature one stuck in there. It's just as far as you can go. So when I stick the rotisserie rod through, it can be kind of like right next to the meat stick. So I want this to be even, and I don't want it to interfere with each other. So you got to make sure when you're putting these in that they're not conflicting or rubbing up against each other. So I'm going to go ahead and get the Joetisserie, or the Kamado Joe, fired up, and I'll be right back. All right, guys, one of the things I want to touch base on I haven't heard many people tell people this, but when you're using a rotisserie and you store it outside, make sure you wash it up really good before you put it in your meat. Because one thing you don't want to do is have this thing sitting outside and then just shove it into your meat internally with it's all dirty and got germs and stuff on it. You know, I'm not a big germaphobe or anything, but I've seen people do it where they just take their dirty spit rod and spits and put them right through their meat without even thinking about it. But just make sure you clean this off really good. Clean the tines here really well as well. What you want to do is you want to make sure you stick it in right in the middle so that it is not going to be out of balance. So try to make it as even as possible and make sure you're going straight across when you come out, just so you can have it nice and straight and balanced on the motor, so the motor is not throwing it off when you're on there. Make sure also you tighten these tines down really well, because one of the things I've also noticed people doing is they don't tighten their tines down and they come loose and the thing gets all wonky as well. So just make sure you got these tied down really well. Since I'm using the MeatStick here, I'm going to make sure that the tines don't hit this or interfere with it at all as well. So make sure you got that away and kind of move it just a little bit more. And there you go. Actually, I'm going to turn it this way so that I'm not touching the this is the ambient probe here, so I don't want that to be touching the tight down button here, or the screw. And make sure you tighten these really tight. Now I'm gonna have to move this just a little bit, I think. There we go. You kind of want to make sure that when it's on there, it's kind of in the middle and not set off to one side. So you might have to readjust it once you get it on your pit as well. But let's go ahead, make sure this is in just right. So there you go. I think this is going to be just fine. I might have to push it just a little bit more this way, I think, because this is the end that goes in the motor, and that usually, there we go. I think this will be just fine. I'll tighten this down. Like I said, make sure you get it inside your meat. Make sure you get this really tight so it's not bouncing around once this thing gets going, because you don't want to have to mess around with it. Once you get it on and get it spinning, you don't want to have to mess with it anymore. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and put this on. My fire is up to temp. Got the smoke going. MeatStick is currently reading the internal temperature at 36 degrees, and it's got the external temp just fine. All right, so I'm going to get this on. I'll be right back.
All right, guys, I'm going to show you here. I'm going to put it right here in the middle, turn my rotisserie on, and you see I got the wood going pretty strong. I'm going to go ahead and adjust the coals a little bit, move them down a little bit more. They're a little too close to this roast. The roast is kind of large, so I'm going to come back and check it in a few minutes to make sure that the temp is just right and don't have a lot of flare up. All right, guys, I also want to show you the software here on my phone. See how it's monitoring the ambient temperature and the internal temperature. This is when it's just getting started, so the fire is still coming up to temp. The internal temp's still in the 30 range, so it's just getting started here. But what I want to point out is this next slide here. As you can see, the fire is getting a lot hotter. It's getting close to my finishing temp. You can see the spike up there where it did get up close to the 400 degree temp. That's where the flare up started, where the fat started melting, and I had to close the vents down. You see it backed right back down. But that's the beauty of having these probes.
All right, guys, so it's getting close to being at the temp that I want to pull it. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Had a couple flare-ups that I didn't capture on film for you because I left I think the vent was open just a little bit too much. So I did close it down. You can see it got a little char there, especially on the bone side. So The internal temperature is still riding right at about 120 right now, but got a little bit of char on the outside. Got a lot of that fat had rendered down and caused a little flare up. So it did give it a little bit hotter than I wanted it to be, but it still should turn out really, really good. So, all right, guys. So I'm gonna get ready to pull this off, and we're gonna let it rest for a few minutes. The meat stick worked really well. It's, was able to handle that hot even when it flared up. It was able to handle the heat on there, and the rotisserie worked just fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this off and let it rest for a few minutes, and then we'll be back. All right, guys, I just checked the internal temp just a minute ago, and it was sitting right at 130 degrees. So, and it's still climbing a little bit, I'm sure. So check out the meat stick. Like I said, it's great when you're using the rotisserie because it is totally wireless and measures both the internal and the ambient temperature, the temperature of your pit, and the internal temperature of the meat. So check that out, guys. I'm going to go ahead and cut this. So no sous vide on this, pretty much just a straight small prime rib roast. We're going to go ahead and cut this bad boy open so we can see what it was. These are the bones that were tied back on, and of course this is going to be probably a little bit more cooked on the outside than on the inside. But look at that. That is pretty nice and medium rare there on the inside, so not a problem whatsoever. So we got some pieces on the outside that are a little bit more well done, which I have some people that like it that way, and then we got some in the middle that's nice and medium rare. Go ahead and cut a piece off here to try. Part of the spinalis. That is awesome, just like I wanted it. There you have it, guys. Use the meat stick with the rotisserie and you're going to be happy with it. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm going to go feed my family now. Make sure you follow us on the Fire and Water Cooking podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. I'll see you on the next Fire and Water Cooking video.